Hello, thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman will be with us shortly. Here's what we're looking at tonight. Recapping a wild day of weather and tornadoes in the suburbs, how the warmer weather plays a role. Who and what to know before heading to the polls this election day. Plus, there's a new office on your Chicago ballot. We share crucial information behind the city's first civilian police oversight board.
In Chicago, when you feed your ballot into a machine on Election Day, you're essentially putting it in a ballot box with two compartments.
And with Election Day tomorrow, our digital series WTTW News Explains answers the question, what happens to my ballot after I vote? And now to our top story tonight. It's the event that happens tomorrow, Election Day for Chicago residents. And who better than WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon to join us with a preview of what to expect. So, Heather, it's wide open here in terms of the mayor race. Any of at least 4 people could make this runoff. What are you watching for tomorrow?
Well, that's just it. Everybody assumes that no candidate is going to get more than 50% of the vote, which means that we're going to do this all again on April 4th. With the top 2 vote getters. The question is, what combination of Lori Lightfoot, Paul Vallis, Brandon Johnson, or Jesus Chuy Garcia ends up in that runoff? And really, it's anybody's race at this point.
And there have been so many ebbs and flows into who's surged, who's fallen off. What are the specific trends that have defined this so far?
Well, this race has really been defined by crime and public safety. And as I've said before, that really means different things to different people depending on what part of town you live on. We've seen Brandon Johnson be really the only candidate in the race saying that he's not going to hire as many officers as quickly as possible, where all of the other candidates, especially Paul Vallis, say the only way to get public safety back under control in Chicago is to hire more officers.
It's a very different race than 4 years ago when police reform was at the top of the agenda. Heather, let's move on to city council races. Seems like there's this very interesting dynamic going on for ideological control of city council between a more progressive far-left vision versus a more center-left vision. What are you watching for in that?
Well, there's just been a huge aldermanic exodus from the city council, so that gives control of the city council really up for grabs. So there are progressive groups like the Chicago chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America who see this as an opportunity to move the city council left, and that has brought a pushback from business-aligned groups who are spending tens of thousands of dollars to knock out these socialist candidates, including Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez in the 25th Ward. He faces a head-to-head contest with Aida Flores, who is also backed by Chuy Garcia. So we will know, once all the votes are counted, how that is going to play out, which might have ramifications.
Right. It's just so interesting to see the interest groups outside that are trying to have an influence, from the FOP on one side to the teachers union on the other side to that group you mentioned of more pro-business folks that have folks that are more aligned with Rahm Emanuel, the former mayor. So do you predict a shift in balance then?
Well, you know, there's so much energy on the progressive side of things, and there have been for more than a year. These groups were determined to oust Lori Lightfoot. So she is really sort of walking this middle ground between being not very progressive and being not very conservative. The question is, can she thread that needle, make it into a runoff, and what does that mean for control of the city council? We'll have to wait and see.
I talked to someone in one of those pro-business groups who said that they may have materialized a little bit late here because groups like you mentioned, the teachers union, other progressive groups, have been at this a really long time. They have really deep infrastructure. So tell us what voters need to keep in mind for tomorrow if they need to get to work, you know, after voting. How much time do they need to give themselves?
So hopefully all of the officials say it should be smooth. Polls open at 6 a.m. and you can go to your precinct polling place, or you can go to any one of the early voting centers, which will remain open as vote centers tomorrow. And if you have a mail ballot, you want to vote in person, take that with you, turn it in, you'll get a fresh ballot. You can also drop off your mail ballot at any of the early voting locations. But if you don't postmark it by midnight tomorrow, you'll be out of luck.
You know, it seems like because this is so close, there might be a chance that we don't know the final 2 folks by tomorrow night. Do you think that's going to be a likelihood?
It's certainly possible. I tend to think it's not super likely, simply because there have been so many votes cast during early voting and so many mail votings. All of the ballots that get to the Board of Elections by today have already been processed and will be counted immediately after the polls close. So we should have a significant number of votes counted relatively shortly after polls close at 7 p.m. And if you're in line at 7 p.m., stay in line. You'll be allowed to vote.
All right, all the election workers and vote counters tomorrow. It's going to be a real long day, so I'm sure they're going to have the coffee and the pizza and the donuts on standby. And it's going to be a long day for us, too, Heather. Looking forward to it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Paris.
And for more on the candidates, or if we didn't get to your question tonight, don't forget to visit our WTTW News voter guide. We have candidate profiles for those running for mayor and aldermanic positions, plus responses to questionnaires, and of course, our ongoing political coverage. It's all at WTTW.com/voter guide. Some other top stories tonight. Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza is touting state legislation that would help families of fallen first responders. Many of them have to wait months before death benefits are paid out.
That's because the appropriation to the Court of Claims, the state agency responsible for processing such awards, was exhausted. This meant that no additional vouchers could even be sent to me at the Illinois Office of Comptroller until the legislature approved additional spending limits for the program.
Mendoza says there were 26 benefit claims for armed service members, cops and firefighters killed in the line of duty last year. The state only budgeted for about 13. The proposal would set aside money to pay these benefits for families of those fallen service members. Mendoza says the measure would ensure more timely payments. It also sets aside a burial benefit for those killed in the line of duty. More construction is on the way for O'Hare Airport with a $50 million airport terminal grant from the federal bipartisan infrastructure law. The city says the funds will go toward upgrades on Terminal 3, which services Spirit and American Airlines, among others. The upgrades include a more modern TSA screening checkpoint, wider hallways, renovated restrooms, and 10,000 square feet of new concessions and amenities. The $50 million grant is the largest of the grants going to 99 airports this year. Construction is expected to begin this summer with completion expected by 2025. And a couple more election items. As long as voters are already in line to vote when polls close at 7 p.m. tomorrow, they are still entitled to vote. That's just one of the several basic voting reminders Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul's office will be monitoring tomorrow. Now, the AG is deploying 120 teams of assistant attorneys general and investigators to monitor polls to ensure those rights remain protected. He's encouraging voters to call his office if they suspect any improper or illegal activity. Up next, the warm weather is a nice break from winter chill, but it comes at a price. At least it did this morning. We explain right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
At least two brief tornadoes touched down in Chicago in the suburbs today, one in Joliet and another on the far north side of Naperville. Meanwhile, two others were spotted just west of Champaign, forcing many to take shelter. How common are tornadoes in winter months? Here to recap today's wild weather and provide some context is Paul Servatka, professor of meteorology at College of DuPage. Paul Servatka, good to talk to you as always. So we mentioned these two brief touchdowns in Naperville and Joliet. What do we know about these?
Well, it was kind of a surprise this morning. They formed pretty rapidly for a short period of time. The atmosphere just was perfect. A little bit of warm, moist air kind of nosed in out of the south, coming up from central Illinois, and that little area with a lot of vertical wind shear, winds changing with height, is really what led to some brief tornadoes.
Do we see any kind of significant damage or injury from these?
No, I haven't heard of any significant damage. A few trees were felled. I did go out to the Naperville area, and there's a lot of trees in that region near a forest preserve, and there's a bunch of trees that are already down, and so it's kind of hard to find out what had been damaged today versus what may have been damaged in the past, or just felled trees from before. But there was a couple of signs, especially near an overpass, where a tree looked like it had tipped over, and so some of those things were damaged, but there was no reports of significant structural damage anywhere.
Wow, and we're looking at video of one of those funnels from earlier today right now. How rare is it to see this in February?
Well, you know, when you have a cold season tornado, such as December, January, February, in the winter months, anytime we get that warm, moist air, we always have a chance for tornadoes because it usually is associated with very strong winds. So it is a dynamic system as opposed to one that may come from heating from the sun. So the winds were very strong at all levels of the atmosphere. And when you have some sustained storms, you can spin up a brief, albeit weak tornado.
And you're out at College of DuPage, which is pretty close to the Naperville area. You had to take shelter this morning. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it really surprised me. It was right after one of my classes. Somebody says, there's a tornado warning. And the sirens started going off, and we have a program in place to make sure that everybody goes to shelter. So while everybody else is running to seek shelter, I'm, of course, running outside to kind of observe what's going on. The one that was further to the south wasn't really doing much, but our area was still under the warning, and there was some rapid vertical motion, sort of the precursor to tornadoes, right over the college. And once that moved to the north, we gave the all clear. And then it's shortly dissipated.
So you mentioned the warm air coming in from the south, the unstable environment here. What does it take for a tornado to gain strength and to perhaps do more damage than what we saw today?
Yeah, usually we think of tornadoes in the spring. So coming up April, May, June, that's going to be our prime months for stronger tornadoes. But we think of warm air at low levels, and then higher up in the atmosphere, maybe about 4 or 5 miles, you've got very cold air, and that's what leads to a condition we call instability. And those are the big thunderstorms where there's a lot of lightning and there's a lot of winds and maybe some hail associated with this. And then when the winds change direction as you go higher, that's going to lead to the development of rotation within the whole storm. This system was limited on the amount of instability. There was just enough to get the onset of this thing, but it formed along these little boundaries like the warm front. And that really helps create an additional amount of rotation in the atmosphere that gets stretched as these thunderstorm updrafts, kind of like a figure skater pulling in her arms and spins faster. That's what's going on with these things. So they're not going to be the strong or violent tornadoes, but they could do damage, and they certainly have the ability to do some knock over some trees or knock over big branches.
That's a really great analogy there with the figure skater or with a diver kind of pulling in their arms and doing that rotation really quickly. So while I have you, Paul, I think we need to put something to rest because, you know, those of us in Chicago have heard this rumor or this notion that tornadoes don't really ever happen within the city limits because the lake acts as sort of a moderating influence on the weather. What's the truth behind this?
Right. That's not really a true statement. If you look at the history of tornadoes, and you can go as far back as 1967 with the Oak Lawn tornado that went into the lake on the south side of the city, or you can look at some other weaker tornadoes that have cut across the Chicago metro area. The lake, although it modifies and certainly affects our weather, doesn't always give that protection to the city. So anytime the winds are southerly or southwesterly, you still get that. I think it was 2 years ago, we were very close to a pretty significant event as a strong thunderstorm moved across the Chicago proper footprint of the city. But that one did not produce a tornado. So pretty much it's a matter of time. It could be 5 years, it could be 100 years, but Chicago will be hit by tornadoes.
Let's hope not anytime soon, although I do remember some water spouts caught on camera off the beach in Rogers Park. I don't know, maybe that was a year or two ago. Anyway, Paul, always very fascinating. Glad you're safe. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And now to Brandis with what to know about a new office on the ballot this election cycle. Brandis.
Paris, voters have repeatedly said that crime is their #1 concern in tomorrow's election. The police accountability system, though, is on the verge of changing. Tomorrow, for the first time ever, voters will be choosing 66 civilians to serve on police district councils. The councils are part of a long-running effort by community activists to assert more influence over the city's police department. Here with more on how the councils will work is Anthony Driver, president of the city's Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. Anthony, welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So first, remind us of the basics, please. How will voters choose the police district council representatives tomorrow?
Yeah, so for the first time, we have a new hyper-local system of government or body in place for policing and public safety in the city of Chicago. So there are 22 police districts. In each of those police districts, there will be 3 people who will be selected as district councils. So in some districts, you may have as many as 6 or 8 people running, but only the top 3 will be selected. So the top 3 vote getters will be inaugurated and be selected as the district council for that specific district. So at the end, all 22 districts will have 3 district councils who will form district councils, and that'll be the new body, a new 66-person body.
And what are some of the main duties? How will they work once they've been elected?
Yeah, so they work just like any other form of government, right? So each district council within a district, so maybe the 3rd district council or 4th, they have to meet once a month. They're tasked with talking to the commander, talking to the different police department entities, the CAPS program, working with constituents. Constituents can bring issues to them. They're tasked with giving policy advice to the 7-person community commission. So it's a hyper-local body, very similar to the local school councils, but instead of being for schools and education, this is specific to the biggest issue in the city of Chicago right now, which is public safety. For
people who've been advocating for police reform like this for a very long time, how significant is this?
It's huge. I actually was just looking at a newspaper clipping from 1973 in May 26, 1973. It was actually from a guy by the name of Bobby Rush.
Who?
Before he was an alderman, before he was a congressman, he was fighting for this very same thing back in 1973. And here we are 50 years later, and they'll be inaugurated in May of this year. So it's a decades-long struggle that predates my birth.
What do we know about the candidates who are running across the city? A good mix of people?
I believe so. I believe so. As with all elections, all different political bodies, there are interest groups. There are folks who are running who are represented or supported by the Fraternal Order of Police. There are folks who are supported by other factions of organized labor. There are community folks who are running. There's faith-based people who are running. So I do believe that it's a good mix, and it's representative of the city of Chicago.
Concerns? Do you have any concerns that the police district councils will become similar to local school councils, which sometimes struggle to have enough people running to fill those positions?
Yeah. As of right now, I would say I don't have those concerns. Many people said that there's no way you'd be able to fill a 66-person body. It just won't happen. This is way too large. And then 122 people sacrificed their time to circulate petitions to get on the ballot for this. So that's more than double what was needed. Not all of them made the ballot, but as of right now, there are enough people. There are folks who are running as write-in candidates. As a good example is I go to almost every city council meeting. There's usually at a quiet meeting about 10 people, at a crowded meeting about 50 people. As president of this commission, almost every meeting we've had 100+ attendees. At some of them, we have over 300 folks who show up and hundreds more who watch online. So the enthusiasm around this is very high right now, so I currently don't have that concern.
So lots of engagement. So the councils are charged with nominating potential members of the permanent 7-person commission, to which you are temporarily appointed by the mayor right now. The mayor will then select from those nominations from the police district councils. What does that mean for those of you who have been named temporarily, and how soon could the councils make these new recommendations?
So if we can walk through this timeline, right, they'll be elected February 28th. They'll be sworn in May alongside the mayor, the treasurer, the clerk, and the city council. They will begin the process of first they'll go through trainings that our commission and our staff has already worked through on how to be an effective commissioner, effective district council person. And then they will get together and form a nominating committee. They will then create a process for nominating 14 folks. It has to be equal number of people from the south side, the west side, and the north side, and 2 citywide folks. After they do all of that, they will vet the people. Our staff will help them vet, and then they will send a nomination to the mayor and the city council, who will then pick 7. I can't say definitively, but if I had to guess, the earliest I can see a new permanent permanent community commission will probably be somewhere around September, October of this year, sorry.
And what might the impact be of whoever is elected mayor in City Hall? Is this something that you'd want to continue to do?
I'm not sure about continuing. I'm definitely interested, but I think that is a decision for the district councils to make on if they think that I should continue or not, and I will be seeking their advice on that. But whoever is in place, they will have to work with the administration. It's almost a co-equal branch of government when it comes to public safety now. The mayor can't select police board members, police superintendent, the chief of COPA. All of those things have to come through the community commission now, and the mayor, of course, has a vested interest in that. So whoever the mayor is, whether it's Mayor Lightfoot or someone else, will have to work together with the commission in order to create the best system of government possible for our city.
Anthony, you've been working on this for a while, as you said. Why do you think this level of community involvement is necessary?
Because we've tried everything else. We've had IPRA that turned into COPA, which is the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. We've had different iterations of investigatory bodies. We've had different types of superintendents. We've tried almost everything except for giving the people who are most impacted a seat at the table. And that's essentially what this ordinance does. That's what this commission does. Is it takes power, it decentralizes power, it takes some power away from the mayor and the executive branch and the city council, and it gives it to everyday Chicagoans. The folks who are running for district council are everyday regular Chicagoans. They are not career politicians. There are folks who are concerned about public safety in their community. So we've tried almost everything else, and I'm confident that if you empower people to empower themselves, that we will be successful.
Okay, Anthony Driver, elections tomorrow. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again down the road. Thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
Up next, what exactly happens to your ballot after you vote? WTTW News explains right after a look at the weather.
Just in case you need one more reminder, it is Election Day tomorrow in Chicago. Many residents have already cast their ballot. So what happens to your ballot after you vote? As part of our digital series, WTTW News Explains, Amanda Vinicki explores the journey of a Chicago ballot.
You've done your research, made your choices, cast your ballot. Then you cast a couple more on behalf of your dead relatives. Hey, it's the Chicago way. Just kidding. So, you earned your I voted sticker. What happens next? In Chicago, when you feed your ballot into a machine on Election Day, you're essentially putting it in a ballot box with two compartments. Ballots with write-in candidates stay separate in one compartment. Election judges will count these by hand at the end of the night. All other ballots are scanned and counted by machine. Unlucky for the judges, otherwise it would be a lot of counting. Once the polls close, the machine spits out a tape of the totals, like a receipt. Election judges work in bipartisan teams at each precinct to keep an eye on everything. They certify things went smoothly and that ballots weren't compromised when they sign the receipts and other legally binding documents. Then they use a cellular device to transmit the totals downtown to Election Central. That's when we begin to see the results. But it's not all high-tech. The paper ballots that got fed into the machine don't get tossed. They go into a big blue hard-shell case on wheels, packed up with a pretty bow, or rather a security seal, to ensure nobody messes with the precious cargo. From then on, anyone who touches the case has to sign a chain of custody form, like evidence in one of those TV procedural dramas. Thousands of suitcases from every Chicago precinct go to a warehouse where they stay, signed, sealed, delivered for at least 22 months, just in case. Some will be opened and reviewed as an extra check. By law, a state audit recounts votes from 5% of all precincts. Procedures differ slightly for voting by mail, early voting, and those who vote from overseas, but not by much. All legitimate ballots are counted, kept secure at every turn, and end up in the same warehouse for safekeeping. So, wear that sticker with pride and peace of mind. Happy voting.
That security seal, I wonder if it got our seal of approval. You can watch more from our WTTW News Explained series on our website, and we're back to wrap things up right after this.
What should the city be doing to better support Black Chicagoans who are victims and survivors of hate crimes?
Classic city of Chicago, we work in silos, so the left hand doesn't know what the right hand doing, and the constituents get left out in between.
Power is the voice. The power is the numbers. The power are the people. The ability to sway elections is the power.
No more dad jokes for me. It's been at times a nasty, negative campaign for Chicago mayors, so we thought we'd end the night with a bit of a palate cleanser. So here are some very short clips of the candidates saying something positive. Here they are in alphabetical order.
I love Chicago. I want to bet on Chicago, and I think Chicago's worth fighting for.
And someone who can unite the people of Chicago.
I care so much about my kids and wanting my kids to be able to raise a family in this city.
That's why I'm running, is to bring this city together, to unite our city around a set of values.
And I love this city. I think people are looking for, someone who can bring us together.
We're touching as many neighborhoods as possible and bringing the message of encouragement to people to come out and vote.
I want to make sure that we're all in one accord, going in the same direction.
You know, I love people. I love Chicago.
You know, this is the greatest, most dynamic city in the world.
There you go. Kumbaya. There they are. Buckner, Garcia, Green, Johnson, King, Lightfoot, Sawyer, Wilson, and Vallis. And that is our show for this Monday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing. And you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast and the PBS video app. Please join us tomorrow night, live at 10 on Election Day. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thanks for watching. Get a good night's rest. We'll see you tomorrow.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to be a multilingual law firm that provides translators for a variety of languages.
There's so many connections to those simple choruses that everybody can sing. And that freedom belongs to me, and it also belongs to all of us if we were reminded of it, because we all need to be reminded sometimes.
Tuesday at 9 on WTTW. Wednesday at 8:30 on WTTW.